What is going on, everybody? It's your favorite guy, Demetrius Naylor, and we are live. It is the Sunday night showcase with your favorite guy, Demetrius Naylor. Tonight's episode is going to be brought to you by BB3 Studios. BB3 Studios creating your faith-based collection, t-shirts, all handmade with love from yours truly and my wife, Miss Stephanie Naylor. She is the thought leader and the thought process behind BB3 Studios. So you guys can check out all the merch. We have quite a few different options for anything that you're looking for. Here's one right here. Here's the new Jesus Did It and Kingdom Mindset Focused t-shirt line. We're super excited about what God's leading us to do in this time with this t-shirt design. So if you guys could check it out, go to BB3 Studios page. You can check out all the designs. We'll have the website up soon. And as always, if you guys are looking for somebody to create your great content, like I always have on my page, Nailed It by Demetrius Naylor, you can go to Retention Masters and talk to Michelle McLean. She is the thought leader behind Nailed It. We switched from the consultant to Nailed It by her design. So if you guys do need any website designs, logos, rebranding, anything, Michelle McLean's your lady to go to. But tonight, again, we are honored with special guests for part 2 of Mr. Flip Happens, Michael Ferraro, CEO of Innovation REI. We are super excited to bring him back tonight. We're going to dive into all things real estate investing. We had a couple of questions off site. So we want to make sure we answer those questions. What's going on, Anthony Santangelo? Always, and we appreciate the support. You're always on here, sir. But if you guys do want a shirt like this, my love with the Jesus symbol. I always get this backwards. Jesus symbol. You can get that at BB3 Studios as well. So tonight we are going to talk to the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Michael Ferraro. And guys, what a time we had last week. We had almost 900 views before the end of the night. We thank you for your support. Continue to share this message out. The Sunday night showcase or the journey on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. where we talk to people going through different journeys. We had Miss Adrienne L. James with us on Wednesday, and we appreciate all that she brought to the table, talking about her faith-based journey and how God led her to where she is now. But without further ado, Mr. Michael Ferraro. What is going on, good sir?
What's up, dude? We got to work on you got to get some theme music or something so when you break
up. You know, it's funny. I was working on it for about an hour and I was like, I can't get it. But yeah, we got to get some like intro music. I got to, StreamYard. Yeah, exactly.
Hype up when I come in here, you know?
Get something going. Oh man, it's a blessing to have you back on here, man. I so appreciated the conversation last week, and I was just like, man, we gotta do this again. We gotta bring them back, and we are honored, we are humbled, we are thankful that you decided to give us some more of your time.
Thank you for having me back, man. I was excited to come back. I felt like we blazed through it last week. I was kind of expecting. For anybody who doesn't know, you hit me up. You said, "Hey, can you be on my show?" I said, "Yes, sir." And that was it. Like there was no prepping. We really didn't have any format. No. We just was kind of kicking it. So I didn't know what to expect, but man, we flew through it. And there were so many things I think both of us wanted to talk in more detail about. So I'm thankful for you having me back.
Yeah, man. And I said the same thing to my wife. I said, man, we never prep. We never do anything as far as prep goes for the show. And you know what I mean? I was like, it was like talking to a friend and she was like, you guys had great chemistry. And I was like, Mike's just such a good dude, easy to talk to. And you know what I mean? Just a wealth of knowledge. It was so crazy, the outreach. So many people DM me and were like, Demetrius, are you going to have him back on? I got questions. So tonight, if you have a question for Mike at any time, if you have a question for Mike at any time, don't hesitate to pop it in the comments. Carrie Cook, last week, we thank you for all the comments and we thank you for all the shares. Your lovely wife actually won the t-shirt competition last week.
She's hype, man. Those are nice, man. We're gonna get a couple of them. I think we ordered a baby onesie for one of our friends on the way, so we're excited about that. And look, man, I did want to say, anybody out there, if they have any questions, I'm an open book. I know it's a little weird when people on your cast that don't know me personally. I'm an open book. So anything, if somebody wants to ask, whether they think it might be a little personal or how it's related to business, tell them to ask. I'm here to hopefully answer some questions for people.
And real quick, Mike, we didn't do this, and I typically do this. I apologize. How can they reach you? What's the best way you would say that you would get the best response? And I know you're super approachable, but what's the best way if somebody wasn't in the immediate area that they could reach out to you?
Probably through our Facebook, our business Facebook page, Innovation REI. We're on Instagram as well too, but a lot of our business comes more through the Facebook side. Our number is 910-320-2665. They can text, call, or email me at mike@innovationrei.com. But we're pretty much, we're responsive to everything, but a lot of our stuff comes through Facebook, I think.
That's awesome. Like I said, Mike's super reachable. So if you guys have any questions that you don't think of tonight, but you think of like, you know what, this is a path that I'm kind of thinking about going down, don't hesitate to reach out to Mike at any time. But I just want to continue on the conversation. Me and Mike started getting into the conversation before. We were talking about like my personal journey with my wife. She got to preach today for the very first time. So we're super honored. And I was super excited to be a part of that with her. Definitely proud of her. My wife, Stephanie Naylor, the thought leader behind BB3 Studios. And it was funny because I was telling Mike before we got started that BB3 Studios was originally not the lane we were going. We were going, nailed it. And I also have my own personal brand called Heavyweight Disciples, which basically talks about the burden that people that are in discipleship of the Lord Jesus Christ carry. And I also recognize that there's no faith-based like workout lines out there. Like when you go to the gym, it's all like Skull and Crush Bones and the Punisher and all this other stuff. And I'm like, we can still be motivated, but like, can we be motivated without all the like demonic undertones? I said, you know what? I'm gonna create a faith-based workout line. And it was so crazy because we were sitting on the show last week and I said, I think I'm going to take a step back and just help my wife and push her forward. And it's been so crazy. We've had, you know what I mean? Like I said, we're not going to put a number in public, but we've had quite the outpouring of support and people buying orders. I'm talking about like, we've got a whole table. I wish I could tell you, we emptied the sofa out of our front living room. We turned that into a full production studio with t-shirts. We got boxes of t-shirts. We got the screen printing going on. We got the heat transfers going on. We got a little bit of everything going on. And I'm just so proud of her because her vision, you know what I mean? This is one of my designs, but her vision that Jesus did it, or the kingdom mindset focus, just took off. And I said, you know what? Let me just put all my marketing efforts behind her and me and Michelle. Michelle is funny because women get together and they kind of like band together. The lady that does my marketing, she was like, you should really put your wife on the show. She probably did hit. My wife got the most amount of views that I ever seen on my show. I was like,
she might be right though.
She was right, so I love her to death. Well, let's jump into it, man. One of the questions I got last week on the DMs was from somebody asking me, Demetrius, can you ask Mike what kind of sacrifice, you know what I mean? We kind of, like you talked about it a little bit, traveling back and forth between DC, but now that you're in it full time and you're here in the local area, what does a day-to-day look like for you in regards to like work-life balance? Because, you know what I mean, as budding entrepreneurs like myself, me and the wife, we're in this 100 miles an hour. We do it all day. We're fielding orders and I'm posting pictures and taking the right picture and doing all the things. So we're in it 24/7. Well, what does that look like for Mike Ferraro?
It's not a whole lot different than that. I think anybody getting into entrepreneurship, it's not so much as real estate investing that that's what I can speak to, obviously. But I think anybody looking to get in business for themselves, if they're really taking it serious, I mean, I guess the biggest sacrifice is probably just time, because that's the biggest difference between running your own business and working for somebody. Is there is not a clock to punch out of. You know what I mean? When there's an issue, when a problem arises, when anything happens, it doesn't matter when it happens, where it happens, what your plans were. Guess what? When you're the owner of a business, mm-hmm. you have a direct, interest in that, and you need to handle it. So, I mean, really, time is the biggest thing. Now, if it's somebody that's asking that's maybe possibly looking to get into it, it's going to be very different than where I'm at now, and our days would look very, very different. When I first started, I was extremely hands-on because I'm a very humble guy, and I want to learn I wanted to see how things were working, because I didn't feel like, how could I sit and tell people how to do things efficiently, and how could I come up with systems that are going to be profitable? if I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? So and it just didn't make sense to me. Again, it's part of being humble. It's part of being self-aware. Like, we're all good at certain things, right? It's like you just had a prime example, what you just talked about, and we talked about last week about being with water, is like, you were self-aware, like, hey, your t-shirts, I'm sure you were moving some shirts with your line and everything, and you were focused enough and paying attention enough to say, hey man, you know what my wife's doing, I really think this might be an avenue to go. And that's just what running a business is. Those are the sacrifices you make, is having to put your pride to the back sometimes, your ego to the back sometimes, and just really get your nose to the grindstone and work. I mean, that's what do you say? I'm curious. I love hearing from other entrepreneurs that are driven like me, because I struggle with the balance part, or I struggled for years with the balance, because I'm so driven,
Yeah. So for me, it's difficult because I am so driven, and it's almost like an addiction for me. Like, it becomes one of those things where I am so focused, thing that, like, I know if I didn't have the support system of my family and my wife, like, this wouldn't work, because
I'm the same way.
I'm thinking of, like, today, I'm reaching out to the next guest. I'm figuring out the next show. I'm figuring out the next print. Before we did this, I just placed a huge order for t-shirts. Like, my mind is always going. But what you have to realize is that short-term sacrifices, and I mean the greater good, recognizing what that greater good looks like for the end game. Like, once you establish, like, short-term goals for yourself, and that can be like, all right, I want to have X amount of dollars by this quarter, or I want to do X by this time frame. Like, write it down. I always tell people in my videos, make it plain, write it down. Once you do those things, then you can set those goals, and then write a large, hefty, lofty goal. And then you say, you know what, once I get to this checkpoint, that's when I'll slow down. You know what I mean? That's when I'll slow down. But, like, you have to have a support system. You have to have people that are like-minded. Like, your wife, great support system. My wife, great support system. They understand that greater good. So my drive is never faulted. And I would imagine the same way with yours. You know what I mean? We have the kids and that kind of struggle. Like, that's the struggle for me. My biggest struggle is the kids, giving the kids enough time, because I am one of those guys, like, I'll put my head down at work and then I'm just gone. Or when I'm doing the t-shirt thing, like, the kids are running around, but, like, I'm so in the zone that I forget about everything else. And that's the real only struggle that I have, that push, that pull for me, is my kids. You know what I mean? Trying to figure out, like, what it looks like for my kids. But I also understand, you know what I mean, that dichotomy, like, what I sacrifice today will be better for them tomorrow. So I'm always in that tug of war. But I think that's really, for me, the only struggle I have, is trying to figure out, like, what that time separation looks like.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'd say I'm pretty much in the same boat with you, man. And I think it's real important, to remember why you started doing something, or what, like you said, those goals. We'll set those goals, but then you lose sight as things are changing and your business is getting bigger. You lose sight, and you forget why you decided to run a business in the first place. And it's just like, for me, and this is just real talk, I never got into this to become like some super rich, crazy guy. You know what I mean? Like, now, obviously, that's a goal of it to happen, but that wasn't why I got into it. Me, I was fully motivated by quality of life. I had always worked the grind, 9 to 8, 9 to 5, the full morning to afternoon, and just not seeing your family and not being available for events with your kids and with your wife. And that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. I wanted, hey, if my kids are having something at school, I don't want to ask somebody if I can take off to go to do that. I want to be able to do that. And that's really where I'm at now, where I'm finally starting to reap some of those rewards. Like, I'm seeing some of the end game results of all that sacrifice. And what I tell people coming up is, especially if you're young, if you have that, that young energy, do it now so you don't have to do it later. Because when you're young, I look back, I'm sure you're the same, I look back, I don't even know how I did some of the stuff when I was younger. Like, I couldn't keep the pace that I kept then, you know what I mean? And, so I just think it's important to get your work in, but don't lose sight of why you're doing it. Because, and I would say that to you too. Like, when like, I know you're a family man, and that the whole reason you're doing this is for the kids. So you can't push the kids to the side while you're working too. You got to find that balance, but I think we all struggle with that,
Yeah. I struggle with that. I think that's my biggest struggle, is finding that work-life balance. But I think that's why, you know what I mean, me and the wife are struggling so bad, not struggling in a regard of money or anything like that, but that's the struggle that we're going through right now, that trading time for money. And that is why I finally have wholeheartedly committed to being and doing the entrepreneurial road, because I'm tired of trading that. Because like I said, we cleared out the front living room. We didn't go to a building. We didn't go to an office. We cleared out the front living room. We got plenty of space here, but we cleared out one of the front living rooms and said, this will be our workshop, because we're still here with the kids. You know what I mean? This is one of those businesses that is pandemic proof, like we talked about. This is one of those businesses where I don't have to turn around and leave for 10 to 15 hours a day and then come back and be like, oh, I got to tuck the kids in for bed, or they're already asleep, or whatever. So that is, you know what I mean? I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they lose sight of the reason why you started, like you said, is they're trading time. They want to get away from trading time for money. And they want to recognize what that looks like to be able to have the two interjoined. Great start. So another question we talked about last week was real estate investing. And I think, you know what I mean, for a lot of people, I think they're getting confused between selling real estate and real estate investing. But I think deeper than that is, I think we need to dive into what that looks like in the process. Like, this is not what you see Eric and Musa on TV. This is not, you know what I mean, flipping Vegas, or this is not what that looks like. I mean, I'm sure there's some components that are similar, but there's so many real world applications that I feel like you can touch on, and I'm gonna just let you run with for a minute.
Okay, so you do me a favor. If I hit something and it's not something common knowledge, stop me so I can take time to explain. But so real estate investing, one of the coolest things about it is it's so diverse in what that means and what you can do. There are a lot of avenues that you can take. There's a lot of different goals and things you can look for. And it's something like we talked about last week, is knowing what is it that you were trying to accomplish. I think it's one of the best things you can get involved with. But let's look at some options. So one, you got to decide if you want to do it full or part-time. Okay. And just to summarize, real estate investing is some type of purchase transaction of, whether you're purchasing to sell it, purchasing to hold it, doing some type of partnership. That's what investing is. That's different than being a realtor. So if people were confused with that at all, a realtor is basically a third-party person. You're helping people buy and sell properties, basically. I am not a realtor. I never went and got my realtor license. I didn't want to. I know it's something I could have generated a lot more income for myself by selling my own properties, but I'm a huge believer in, if you want to, let me ask you the quickest way to become a millionaire. What, you got a short answer for that?
No.
No. Mine is try to make somebody else a millionaire.
Yeah. And, there you go.
And the reason we talking about that is your network, because guess what, man, when you're building a network and you're genuinely trying to put money in other people's pockets, guess who they're going to be looking out for when opportunities arise that fit the bill for you. It just makes sense. So yeah, I could keep all this money, do all this extra work for realtors, but you know what? Let somebody else make some money. I've made a lot of realtors around here a lot of money, and I always had great relationships with them. And guess what? When they get something, I don't even have to do tons of marketing. They're calling me for flips, for renovation jobs, whatever. So, really just, keep in that mindset. Like, you don't have to make all the money. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of components to it, but you can do it part-time, full-time if you want to invest. It really just depends on your funds. It depends on your goals. And as far as what the investing looks like, it can be, like we talked about, you can do wholesale, which all that is, we hit on it last week. Those are people, all they do is go out. They are contract negotiators. That's what they do. They go out, they negotiate contracts with motivated sellers, get them locked up, and then they come out to investors like myself who are cash buyers in the market, and they try to sell those contracts. Anytime you guys hear, and I think you mentioned to me that a lot of people are hitting you up about that. Oh, no money down, to get rich quick. Anytime you hear that, that's what they're talking about, is wholesaling. Now, look, you can make bank wholesaling. There's people in this country, that's all they do. That's all they do is wholesale, and they make tremendous livings. But it's not as easy as what people make it. So, like, you don't go do that in your part-time. You don't just go find a motivated seller, negotiate this amazing contract for half of market value, and then, it just doesn't happen like that. But it can happen. It is something somebody can get into. And I always recommend with people that don't have access to funds and resources to actually buy property on their own, I always tell them to look into wholesaling, because it's a way to kind of get your foot in the door, start networking with some other investors, and it shows you the workings of how to find a deal, create a deal, and execute on a deal. So it's a great way to.
Just to time out real quick. So a couple of key things. I want everybody to get this, because this is a real and raw show about entrepreneurship in the real estate investing world. You do not need a license to be a real estate investor. No, Mike does not have his license, so you don't have to. That was when I first met Mike. We talked about his thing. That was one of the first. I was like, Mike, you don't have your license, and it's crazy because
everybody said that.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, okay. Net worth. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? And that was a key point. So then the next key point I heard you say was that wholesaling. Now, wholesaling is, break that part down. I want you to break that part down. Wholesaling is
finding motivated sellers with properties, getting the property under contract, and then you're basically selling the contract to somebody who actually wants to buy it. So you don't have to have money. Wholesalers typically aren't looking to execute the contract. They're just looking to get something locked up under contract.
Gotcha.
And
now, what risk is involved with wholesaling though?
Very little. That's why a lot of people get into it at the beginning when they don't have funds, because there's not a lot of risk. It takes, again, like anything, like any sacrifice, time is going to be one of my main answers. You hear it all the time. It's not easy to just find motivated sellers. You don't just roll up on somebody and say, oh, you got a house that you owe half on or that you own outright. You want to sell me for dirt cheap. It doesn't happen. You got to find them. You have to go through a lot of negotiations to get them locked up. And then when you get it locked up, you actually have to find an investor that you can sell it to that's not going to, because I hate to say this, but like in a lot of businesses, I've ran into a lot of snakes in the real estate investing world. And a lot of them treat wholesalers very poorly. And they're kind of like look down on them. And a lot of them will try to take advantage of them because most wholesalers don't have the funds to close themselves. And a lot of investors know that. I've never been of that mentality. I don't understand it. I've seen people try to screw wholesalers out, like to kind of nab a property out from under them and not pay the wholesaler. And meanwhile, I'll go through with that wholesaler over the course of a year, and they'll sell me 10 properties that I make 20, 30 grand on each one, and they're getting paid. So again, it's making other people money. And guess what? Now I got all these wholesalers. I have a number of wholesalers, some of the best wholesalers in our area, that we have a verbal commitment to each other. They'll give me first dibs on it. Like they call me up as soon as they get it. I get first look at it. If I want it, I take it down. If not, I'll even help them find buyers sometimes, because I want these guys making money. I want wholesalers that I'm working with to be successful, because guess what successful wholesalers do? They go out and they find more properties.
Yes.
And, at the time when I first started, I was more like a wholesaler in the sense of like I was in the weeds trying to find all the deals myself and do negotiations and all this. It's very, very time consuming. That's why I love wholesalers, and I'll gladly pay a wholesaler. I don't care what the wholesaler makes. Some people have called me and asked me before, and they said, well, how much is it going to make you mad if I make on a deal? I said, as long as I make my numbers, I don't care if you make $1 million. If I can make what I need to make on the deal, then I'm going to make it happen. But that's all a wholesaler is, man. They negotiate contracts and they sell those contracts. I guess the one risk sometimes with contracts, a wholesaler might have to put like a due diligence money or earnest money down, like some type of non-refundable deposit. But in my market, a lot of times you can get them locked up without that. And if you are getting them locked up, they're minimal. If you're having to do it, you're maybe putting $250, $500 down, which you could lose if you weren't able to get the contract sold to somebody. But other than that, it's pretty much risk-free.
Nice.
Yep.
So if you're just tuning in, I'll put you in the green room for just a second, Mike. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Mike Ferraro of Innovation REI. just gonna take those off tonight. They're fogging up on me. But we're talking to him about real estate investing. We're talking to him about his journey, his entrepreneurial journey, and what that looks like for him. Tonight we're getting a little bit more granular. Last week we kind of like blew by a lot of topics. A lot of people were like, "Well, what about?" And we just kind of kept blowing by because we recognize and we appreciate your time, especially on a Sunday evening. We don't want to keep you for a super long time. I never want to dishonor anybody's time. So what I always try and do is make sure that we talk about all the key things. Remember, tonight's episode is brought to you by BB3 Studios. If you want a t-shirt or looking for a faith-based collection t-shirt, you can always reach out to us. We have all the t-shirts that you need. Again, tonight we are talking to Mike Ferraro, and we are appreciative of his time. So let's bring him back on in. So we just got done talking. About wholesaling, Mike. So, what is a topic that you feel like we missed last week that you want to definitely retouch? I hope, and I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, if I am giving some horrible feedback. I'm gonna pop out and put it right back in.
So, I think one thing we just didn't really hit on that great was maybe some more of the components of like what to look for in a deal and like how the actual numbers work out in a deal. Because I think that's one thing I know we talked about, like knowing that stuff, but I don't think we really got into it. Yeah. And again, we're open for business, whatever you want to talk about. But that was one thing that came to mind for me. What do you think about hitting that?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. That's actually was one of my questions I was going to ask. I just didn't know if you had anything you wanted to speak about. But so when it comes to a house, so say, and we'll just throw out some generic numbers, right? So say we got a house and it comes up and it's under foreclosure. And then you turn around and you say, you know what? I like this house. What do those numbers have to look like in order? Because I imagine that every foreclosure or every property under distress, or every time you see a property that's been sitting there, that's, maybe family members got into a squabble and they can't get over it or whatever, and you see a property, I imagine you don't take every deal. So what do those numbers look like in order for you to take that deal?
So for me, there's one, it depends on the amount of work. Yeah. So I don't have one set formula I always use that I have to get. Like I've done flips where we were able to get in and out. We spent maybe $5,000 to $10,000 on the renovation. We actually were in the house for 5 days, got it turned around. It was already in good shape. We were able to find motivated sellers. And I've done deals like that where I'm only making $10,000 on the flip. You know what I mean? And again, it depends on your goals, quantity. Like, are you trying to just do as many as you can? Or are you trying to just, you only have funds to do one deal at a time, so you got to hit a bigger one and make more money. And of course, just like I would do something and make a quick 10,000. If it's a job, it's a massive renovation. We're going to be there for months. We're going to be dealing with permitting. We're going to be dealing with all that stuff. Then, I might have I will have a much higher profit number that I need to see. So again, that's something I do where I don't like it with having one set formula, because every scenario is a little bit different. It also depends how many I already am working on. If I only got one I'm working on, then I'm going to if I got to jump on another deal. If I got 7 that I'm working on, then the numbers better look really good on it for me to take on an 8th at one time,
Now, what would be your recommendation for somebody just starting out? And I know for you don't have a set margin, but is there a certain margin of profit that a first time investor should be looking to create, or should it just be like, hey, look, even if you break even, you did good?
It's your personal goals, man. I think that's my answer. It's your personal goal. If you're just dabbling and it's just something you want to do very much in your spare time, if you want to hold out and set, and it depends on your market and all that. Obviously, if you want to set a goal, hey, I want to make 20,000, I want to make 30,000, or a lot of newer investors will be happy making 10 because they've never made that much money that quick before. And you're kind of, I always tell people, even when you're making a couple grand, I told you about my first couple deals, sleeping on concrete floors, make a couple $100. But I considered it, I tell people I was paying tuition. That's what I tell people, like I was just paying tuition,
OJT.
Yeah. School of hard knocks, learning what you can learn. So I don't think it's one set number across the board. I think it's just individual preference and where you're at in your business. Now, what I can tell you is to evaluate a deal, it's actually really easy. And I wanted to put that out there for all your viewers as well. It's really consists of 4 components to come up with an offer, like what you can pay on something. Okay. So, and really only one of them is a variable for the most part. So the first thing you need to do when you look at a house, and the first thing I look at is, I think once this house is renovated and looks beautiful, what is the market going to allow me to sell it for? And that's your ARV. It's your after repair value. And, you know, if you're working with realtors and other professionals in the field, pulling comps and things like that, you should be able to really nail that number down, like a safe number that you're going to be able to sell that property for. So that's the first thing I look for. That's my starting point on the equation. Then they call this quiet/carrying cost. Okay. This is the one that kills a lot of first-time investors. Okay. Because if they call it quiet cost, because it's not something you think of typically. So in my market, just for an example, a quiet carrying cost usually ends up running about, for a cash buyer, somewhere around 10% of the ARV. So if I'm going to sell a house for $100,000, okay, these costs are going to come up to about $10,000 of that off the top. So if I bought a house one day and I turned around, and if I bought a house for $90,000, I turned around and sold it for $10,000 the next day, or $100,000 the next day, there's not a $10,000 profit there. It's actually almost nothing, because the quiet costs completely eat the money up. And what those consist of are things like, so when I buy the home, I'm going to have some closing costs I pay at the attorney's office and things like that, right? I've got to get insurance on the property, or you should get insurance on the property. You're going to owe some taxes on the property, of course. And then in our market, for sale by owner doesn't work good in my market. There's some places it does. It doesn't work here, okay? So 3% to list the property to your listing agent. You're offering 3% to a buyer's agent. Also, we're the home of the VA loan. If anybody isn't local here, the VA loan is a beautiful thing for military and government workers, where you can buy a house with 0 down. It's fantastic for them, right? It's great for guys trying to get in with no money, want to own some property. But when it comes to buyers, or it comes to a seller of a property, a lot of those people, because they can get a deal with 0 money, they legit have 0 money to bring to the table.
Yes.
So they're gonna ask you for roughly 2 to 3% of that ARV towards their closing cost.
Yes.
Then I've got to pay my closing costs as the seller at the deal. So anyway, you see how these things add up. And roughly for a cash buyer, usually somewhere between 9 and 11%. That's why I just say 10%. Now, if you're getting a bank loan to get the property, well, guess what? Now you have additional quiet cost, loan origination fees, the interest you're paying on the money throughout. That might bump you up to 12 to 13% of the ARV. Then you got the folks that haven't been working on their credit, which if you aren't working on your credit, go work on it. Yes. They're going out and getting hard money. Whew. Them boys get paid for giving you that money, and it is expensive. And at that point, you're talking about spending 15% of your ARV gone. That's before you put $1 into renovating a house or anything. So in the example, so we had a $100,000 house. If I sell a $100,000 house, that's $10,000. If I'm selling a $200,000 house,
it's $20,000.
$20,000. And if it's 15%, $30,000. So understand, that's where I've seen the most new investors get hung up, is really underestimating what those costs are and not accounting for them, man. And they're like, oh, I just bought this house for $100,000. I'm gonna put $40,000 into it. I'm gonna sell it for $180. I'm gonna make $40,000 profit. And it doesn't happen like that. Now, look, again, this is where it's so important to get with a realtor, somebody possibly like yourself here in the future, somebody with some market knowledge, but you need to know those things, because guess what? There's other hot markets where you can maybe do for sale by owner, and you just have to pay a buyer's agent, or buyers pay their own closing costs, right? So those numbers fluctuate greatly. I'm just telling you my market. So that's number 2, is a quiet carrying cost. Okay. Number 3, renovation estimate. Now with me, we've been doing this enough. I can walk through a house within a matter of 10, 15 minutes, and I can have a pretty close ballpark number of what I'm planning to spend on the reno. that's really the only variable. You should know your ARV, you should know the quiet carrying cost. The renovation's the one variable, because sometimes you just get into things and you find more stuff wrong with it. But you should go get your GC, or have a good network with somebody who does home repairs. Get a couple estimates before you buy the home if you're able to, and figure out that renovation cost. But that's the third component.
Now,
and then go ahead.
Now, real quick before we go forward, so you got the quiet carrying cost, you got the after repair value, and you got renovation estimate. Now, where would you recommend, like, for somebody who doesn't know and is not trying to get taken by surprise on a reno? Because I imagine that whoever you get to do the estimate is probably going to do the work for you if you're not thinking. But the nice thing is, you were talking about like getting in there, getting your hands dirty, figuring out some of those things. So you know what I mean? That is the school of hard knocks. That is, I didn't want anybody to miss that. Excuse me. I didn't want anybody to miss that part, because that is what getting your hands dirty, sleeping on concrete floors, you know what I mean? Walking around, doing the repairs with the guys, you know what I mean? That is what builds up that tolerance to say, where a guy will come in and say, well, this will all cost you $20,000, in the back of your head, like, I've done this before. This will cost me $9,500, and you know what I mean. You're trying to take me for a ride. So I just didn't want to pass it up, because you know what I mean. Like I said, you put in that time.
It's huge, man. And a lot of people that do investing, you know, they don't have backgrounds in home renovations. You know, that's what. Again, an investor. Not all investors are hands-on home renovation people. We're not licensed. We don't have to be licensed contractors. You're just basically, you're taking your money that you might want to invest somewhere else, and you're investing it in real estate. Yeah. So again, that's why I always hit on that networking, man, is having a couple people, again, talk to local realtors, the realtors, they know the people doing the repairs. They know who does good work, who does bad work. Talk to realtors, talk to other handymen, talk to your friends who've had work done that can recommend somebody, and get some estimates in there. And don't always go with the cheapest, but you know, if you bring 3 contractors out to a job and they're all within $5,000 of each other, guess what? You have probably a pretty as good of a guess as you can on what the renovation job's going to cost. And it's really just about mitigating risk. You know, it isn't risk free. Like, there's
a risk averse.
Yeah. You just have to be smart about it. These are calculated risks, though. These aren't just, well, I think this is a good house, I'm going to buy it. I'm buying it on emotion because I want to do a deal like I did on my first deal. It's not that. It's going out and getting some qualified people to help you gauge your risk, and then you mitigate that risk factor.
Nice. So what's number 4?
The fourth, profit.
Profit.
How much profit you want to make. Whether it be you want to use a percentage of what you're investing based off the other items. If you just want to use a flat fee of, and you know, I used to do way more percentages again when I was first starting, and because I was really trying to figure out what to expect, like what's realistic in my market, what should I aim for. So I was evaluating the hell out of everything, you know what I mean? But now it's just like I look at a job, I'm like, man, I want to make 15 grand on that. Or man, that's a monster. I want to make 30 grand. I want to make 40 grand. And that's how it is. So you start with the ARV. That's your big number. You subtract out the other items. You subtract out quiet carrying cost. You subtract out rehab estimate, and you subtract out profit. And that final number you have, that's your offer. That's what you can offer on a property and hit the profit margin that you want to hit.
Nice.
And it's it's that simple of a formula. But there's a lot of components to it, but it's that simple of a formula.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you just started off using that formula, you'd find some kind of success. Even, you know what I mean, walking blindly into a situation. Now, one thing I did want to touch on, and somebody just messaged me and said, where do they find the houses? And like, we'll just use our general area because we don't, you know what I mean. But like, I imagine you have people calling you. You know what I mean, courthouse. I mean, but you talk about that. Where do you find the houses that you go ahead and list?
So
I'm sorry, that you rehab.
Yes. So I used to be on the grind, and I used to go look, there's all types of things. There's driving for dollars. You can look at people with overdue tax records. You can look at, all, for anybody who doesn't know, all real estate records, property records, that's all public information.
Public information.
So you can, that's all public. You can go research anything. You can go and pull up, out of state owners that own properties, and you can look at properties of a certain age so that you could see if maybe they have equity in them or that were sold during a certain time. And it's really just kind of a game of trying to figure out finding properties that have equity in them that might have some type of a distressed seller. So again, there's a million ways to name them. It's driving for dollars. That's just driving through your neighborhoods on your way home and noting if a house is overgrown or if the roof's been damaged for 2 months and it looks empty, stuff like that. Go to the property records, look them up, see if it looks like they have equity, and then you got to go get a hold of those people. Tax foreclosures, people getting ready to get foreclosed on, or people behind on taxes, people that just got divorced, people who have inherited properties.
There's a bunch of different places.
There's a bunch of ways to do it, and it's really up to you how you want to do it. You can go spend the time and find those yourself, which is what I used to do. Nowadays, I've created a bunch of again, we talked about with wholesalers. So I have wholesalers coming to me all the time. And then I have realtors coming to me all the time, and they're saying, hey, I got called to sell this house, but it's in bad shape. It's never going to pass an appraisal. It's not going to sell to like somebody wanting to get a loan. So they'll call me and say, do you want to go work with these people? And then, of course, you can look on the MLS too. The MLS is just the standard listing agency. You can look for foreclosures, short sales, any type of quote unquote like distressed or bank owned property or anything like that. And you can usually find deals like that. You can also look on sites that for sale by owners because they typically don't get the same traffic as somebody listed with a realtor. You can reach out to them. So there's all types of ways to find them. It's just you got to kind of commit yourself. And then even it's not easy. Just finding the house isn't that easy. I tell people the story. There was one I found. I had called this house a number of times. It was driving for dollars. One, I was renovating in a neighborhood. I've seen this house a million times. I found some numbers. I was doing some skip trace and found called, never got anything back. I was driving by it one day. I said, I'm about to call these fools up again. Called them, left a message, nothing. She called me back that day, and it was a big story. It was a big story about what happened with the house. And from that first time I talked to that lady, it was a year before I closed the deal on the house.
Wow.
And that's just what you're dealing with when you're dealing with these type of properties. It happens like that. Sometimes you'll find somebody right there and they need to sell it. I need to sell it before the weekend or they're going to take it from me. There's people out there that are about to get foreclosed on that own houses outright. They're about to get foreclosed on they're about to get evicted, taken out of the house because they owe taxes on it. They can't afford the taxes on it and they own the house outright. You know what I mean? So there's situations like that all the time. And that's what we call like a motivated seller, somebody that needs to make something happen. But yeah, hopefully I didn't ramble too much. But the answer is lots of ways to find.
That was a good answer because, like I said, there's a lot of people asking, like, all right, like there's some people texting me. They're like tiptoeing, like they're possibly on the edge, and they're, you know what I mean. So if you start getting some DMs in the next few days, I apologize, but you know what I mean. There's some people that I think that are on the edge that are like, either have a few dollars or have a way to get a house. So let me ask you this question. I don't know if we touched on it last week. So say you're not the house that you found. So you find a deal, but the house won't pass inspection. So you can't get a traditional bank loan. How else can they go about it?
So you can get an inspection. Doesn't matter. So I want to make sure we're using the right terminology. So like most banks, they don't require you to even get an inspection, like to get a loan. So most banks will require you to they'll require an appraisal. Like, so they appraise the property. If the property won't appraise for what you're trying to buy it for, then I would say my first guess would be it's probably not a good investment property.
Yes.
Because typically when you're getting an investment property, you're getting something with a lot of equity in it for whatever reason, whatever the motivating factor is that you're being able to lock it up, it already has equity in it. If it doesn't have equity in it, then it's not going to be a good property to buy for the most part. So I think you're trying to give me a trick question, maybe.
I was trying to tee you up, see where you're at. So my next question would be, so in this, what would be the number one thing, man, as we close, and we're about 15 minutes out from closing. I want to thank really quick, just thank everybody that's tuned in tonight. We got Anthony Santangelo, Kiera Rugg, Bill Schomburg, Brandon Ruth, Jimmy Gibson, my wife, Renee Suarez, Timothy Watson, Jordan Ashley, Macy Payne, Eddie Hope, Alex Flores, Dean Dicker. We've had some great tune-ins. David Sheldrake. We've had some great tune-ins tonight. In this journey that you call real estate investing, what would be the number one thing that you would tell somebody to do in preparation for this journey? And what would be the number one thing you tell somebody to watch out for?
The number one thing would be outside of research, obviously, and that's research everything in the market, realtors, again, building your network. I'd say really work on your plan, having some set goals. And then really one of the biggest things, unless you're just cash rich, which I never had the honor of being, is working on your credit and working with financial institutions to know what you're going to be capable of doing. Because the absolute worst case scenario is you go put all this time into finding a property, and you've done all this work to find it, and then you've negotiated this amazing deal with somebody over the course of months, and you never got your stuff straight in the first place to close on the deal. And then you're in panic mode, and it's stress, and it's just not the way to do things. You should always have this stuff laid out. So you really need to have, I guess that would be the big thing, is figuring out things in order to have the funds available, whether it be a loan, whether you're going to use hard money, and then you need to research all the costs with that, whether you're going to have some type of private investor, but really just having all your ducks in the row so that when you do actually decide to pull the trigger and that deal does come around, because they don't just come around all the time, you need to be able to move quick on it. You can't figure that stuff out, then you're going to miss your deal. And that would be the biggest thing, is just getting yourself in order, your finances in order.
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready, because what they said. Now, how you bring that up a couple of times. How often are you buying, not per se yourself, but how often are these deals coming to fruition? Or how often are you in a position where somebody, either whether it be the money drives, whether it be, people in sticky situations, they become the motivated seller? How often does a deal come about?
So when I was going heavy, when I was mainly just flipping, I had a couple rentals, but I was still just hot and heavy flipping. I wasn't doing a ton of renovation work for other people, and I didn't have a ton of reno. We would flip, 20 to 25 a year. So that's pretty heavy, for our market. Again, we're not a small town, but we're not a big metropolis either with, so those are pretty respectable numbers. And there was other investors doing numbers like that too. So, the deals are there. And if you look hard enough, you can almost always find some deals. They're there. Now, right now they're drying up a little bit, which is perfect timing for me, because I have been expecting this moment. So I've been changing all my pieces around to head into something else. But the deals, when I was hot and heavy, I was doing 20, 25, 30 a year. When things have slowed down, I might do 15 to 20 a year, without really and that's without me really going out and looking for them anymore. That's just stuff coming to me, basically.
Another question that just came in is, how do you keep emotion out of the rehab? Because you see some of these people, and they're they get so wrapped into it, they get so emotional. How do you keep the emotion out of it so that way it doesn't affect your bottom line?
Keep good track of your record. Keep good track of your records. Good track of your expenses. The more you're looking at those expenses and seeing them, I don't care if you got to every time, if you go home every 2 days and recalculate where you're at for your numbers, do it. If that's what it takes, if you're the type of person that you can get caught up in doing that, then go and see those numbers, because them boys add up quick. It's real money. That's not casino money or chips you're playing around with. It's money going. So that would be my thing, is two, have people around that aren't yes people. That aren't yes people. Make sure that you run some ideas by people. Hey, would you think, and your realtor should be a huge component of this too, by the way. Because here's the thing when it comes to investing. We're not trying to do a poor rehab, right? We want to do a nice rehab. We want it to be beautiful. But keep in mind, every neighborhood, and this is that ARV we talked about, every neighborhood has a peak ARV. It doesn't matter if you fly in hardwoods from Brazil and you go to the jungles of the rainforest to grab some type of granite rock to put on it. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? There's if you're in a neighborhood and the highest selling house has been $190,000 over the last 3 years, then guess what? When your house appraises, it doesn't matter how nice it's going to be. It's going to appraise for $190,000. So I think that the balance and what you're trying to do in investing and flipping, you're trying to renovate that house to the point that you hit that ARV, and then that's it. That's what you're trying to do. You know, you're trying to get it to that level, and then anything beyond that, you're just wasting. You're just wasting dollars. You're going to cease to get a return on your money.
Gotcha.
It's a law of diminishing returns. It's the same thing in life and anything you do. It's the same thing with real estate investing. Once you start putting too much into it, you're going to have there's going to be a diminish in your returns on it. So I just think seeing the numbers and having some people that you can trust and talk to keep you in line is probably the answer to that.
Gotcha. Okay. So definitely want to have a tight circle. Now, in your case, and I think, and like, again, I apologize, we touched on it last week, but let's dive a little bit deeper and I know we only got a few minutes left, but let's dive a little bit deeper into where outside of, because the bank's going to give you X loan and then you have to do the rehab.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways that people can get money for the rehab outside of just saying, you know what, here's $20,000 out of my pocket that now I gotta buy the lumber and I gotta buy the sheetrock and I gotta do this and I gotta hire this contractor? Because a lot of people, you know what I mean, and I've seen a few people that rehab that go to be like, all right, I'm gonna do this investment property. I sit back and watch, and I'm like, you forgot one small cost. Like, you gotta pay somebody to do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely. So there's a couple things you can do. So one, again, create those relationships with your banks, because there are loan vehicles out there that will, if you have enough equity in the property, that will front load you the renovation money as part of the loan. So that's huge, man. Go talk to people. You don't know if you don't ask. Go tell them that's what you want to do. Go talk to them. That's ideal. That's idea number one, because it can happen. Two is credit is cash. I mean, it's the same thing as cash. You know it. You're in the automobile industry. You know it's no different. Credit is huge. You can renovate a house smartly using credit. So if you have some credit cards, pay attention to your bill cycles and make sure you're not doing any big purchases right at the end of a bill. You know, if you're going to go do pay for a $10,000 kitchen and your bill cycle is about to hit, wait 3 days. Do it, because you're buying yourself. That's all you're trying to do, is always buy yourself time. Same thing with like credit cards, like with Lowe's and Home Depot. A lot of them, you can go, if you qualify for a card, a lot of times when you make a big purchase, you can choose either like 10% off, or you can do 6 months interest free.
Gotcha.
Well, there you have it, man. Like if you do a $20,000 rehab over 6 months and you're doing interest free, you're just making minimal payments. You're only having to come out of pocket, $500-600 a month to fund this huge renovation. Same thing with a credit card. You can do the same thing with your credit cards. You can transfer. A lot of times, if you transfer to a new credit card, they'll give you 0% interest for the first 6 months or 12 months. I mean, it's really getting creative with those type of things and being smart about your calendar. Like I said, like if your billing cycle is about to end, don't do a $5,000 purchase. Wait 2 days and do it. And then you just bought yourself 30 days of not paying on that. And then really only thing you'd have to come up with is the money to pay. If you're not doing the work yourself, you'd have to pay a laborer. But guess what? You can, everybody takes credit card nowadays. If they needed cash, you could do credit card advances. So again, it's really getting all that stuff in order. But again, you want to go do that before you have a house. Like go to Home Depot, get these cards, go to your banks.
Stuff lined up. That goes right in line with the whole concept of tonight is getting lined up, being prepared, so that way when it comes time to actually make the purchase,
you're ready. Because time is money, man, and that's what you'll. And if you don't know it, as soon as you become an entrepreneur, you'll learn it. You know, time is money. So you need to get yourself set up, get yourself in a good position to win.
Yes.
And then move forward and execute your plan and see what happens from it.
Now, 5 minutes left.
Okay.
I want to ask you one last question. What would you have told young Mike in 2007 when you started this? What would you have told him? Or I'm sorry, 7 years ago, what would you have told him to do to prepare for today? Because there's obviously some things that you've been through. There's some things that you've understood. There's some things that you now know that you probably wish you would have known back then. But what would you have told young Mike or done differently, or would you have done anything differently? Because I think, and before you answer, I think there's a lot of people that discount that hard work, or discount that struggle bus that they have to ride on for a little while, or discount the sleepless nights, or discount the hardwood or the hard floors sleeps. And you know what I mean? So what would you say to young Mike?
Man, it's tough because I've learned a lot, but I don't know if I would have learned it a different way. You know what I mean? Like I know that's kind of a cheap out answer.
No, that's it. That's exactly it. Because you can't get it without learning it.
Yeah, there's nothing I couldn't have gone back and said, hey, read this book instead. I couldn't have gone back and said, I really couldn't have given any advice that would have taught me the same lesson that I learned doing the things that I did. I think the one thing would have just been, don't feel like you have to do it on your own. I think if I could really go back, that would probably be the biggest advice I'd give my young self. Because look, we haven't hit on this, but like I'm a very changed person from the person I was growing up. I'm an introvert. A lot of people don't know that I'm an introvert, a huge introvert. Growing up, man, I was a lonely, quiet, shy kid, battled with a lot of internal demons and things like that. And I was just I just never felt comfortable in my own skin. You know what I mean? And so because of that, I learned to rely on myself, which is a good thing, I guess. But there's so much to gain from other people. And, if young Mike would have reached out to young Demetrius, maybe you would have shed some light on something to me a little bit earlier. And that was the biggest thing. For a long time, I always had a chip on my shoulder, and I felt like it was me against the world. And it's not that. And you can still have that fighter mentality, like the me against everybody, without that feeling in your heart weighing you down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Humility.
And I think that's the thing I think that's my journey with God. I mean, that's been a huge blessing for me. That's kind of taken that weight off and opened my eyes to something different. And I can still have that fighter mentality without the low points of that I faced in my life.
Got you, man. I almost feel bad because I'm like, man, we could just be on here talking about the whole thing, because like you said, we still didn't get to young Mike, what that was about, what his life was about, how he ended up being where he's at now, how he, FBI, the real estate investing, and we didn't get into any of those small details. And I'd love to bring you back at a later date to talk about some of those things. But man, what a blessing. I think you answered a lot of people's questions. I really wanted to get some of those hard questions asked. I don't ever do scripted because I want it to be real. I want it to be raw. I want it to be authentic in any platform that I'm on. I don't get it. Sometimes I might repeat myself, sometimes whatever, but I want it to be real. I want it to be raw. Like you can ask my wife, 20 minutes before I get on, I do my banners and change them out, and that's it. You know what I mean? So I want it to be authentic, and you, my friend, are super authentic, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate you, your wife, and your family for sharing you with us.
Likewise, brother. Anytime you hit me up, anytime I'll come through.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you. Have a good night.
You too, bud.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just got done talking to Mike Ferraro. CEO of Innovation REI, real estate investor, Mr. Flip Happens, also Mr. Dancing with the Stars. Guys, there's so much to unpack here that we talked about tonight when it comes to real estate investing but what I would urge you to do before you do anything, before you follow any one of the 4 steps, because remember, he gave us 4 crucial steps in order to figure out how you're going to go about doing this. One would be after repair value, making sure you know what that's going to look like. You know what I mean? Like you said, if it's only worth $190,000, it's only worth $190,000. It doesn't matter if you, oh my God, what he said about flying in granite from the rainforest. It doesn't matter. The quiet carrying cost, the cost that you are going to have associated with everything that goes into a closing cost, all the fees that go into. So a lot of people discount those things. You know what I mean? Renovation estimate. You need to make sure that you have a solid reno plan, a solid rehab plan, because if not, you're going to get sucked into thinking that you're going to make $1 million when you haven't correctly estimated how much it's going to cost to repair. And then, of course, 4th, profit. Before you go make that deal, you need to estimate in there your profit margin. What, you know what I mean? It's old age adage, pay yourself first. And what does that look like? Guys, as always, I appreciate your time. Tonight we ran just a little over, but I always want to thank you. Tune in next Sunday for the Sunday Night Showcase and our next guest. Remember, for the best person who shares this out, we're going to provide you with a free BB3 Studios design t-shirt, just like the one I have on tonight, either love or one of the other designs. I appreciate you. God loves you. I love you. Guys have a blessed weekend.